This is something that we do instead of New Year's resolutions.
New Year's resolutions can lead to burnout, stress. By the time you get to February, you often find that people are giving up. Whereas what we do really takes on a life of its own and its own energy and gains momentum and can lead to some real life-changing good. Delivered something wonderful, totally unexpected. We got married.
Yay!
If you'd suggested that to me in January of 2023, I'd have said, no way.
I've just become a very different person, and it's very interesting to think about how much it's changed my to-do list and how I prioritize.
I'm not allowed to eat this cookie until you hit subscribe. Please, I'm hungry.
The To-Do Show, the To-Do Show, the To-Do Show, the To-Do Show.
Welcome to a very special New Year's episode of The To-Do Show. The To-Do Show is a show all about how people use lists to organize their lives. And at this time of year, we think about a very different type of list, New Year's resolutions. So I wanted to have on the best guest ever, my husband, Rory, to talk about our version of New Year's resolutions. It's something different, and we think that everybody should try it. So yeah, here today, we are going to discuss the concept of words of the year. And this is something that we do instead of New Year's resolutions. So Rory, could you please describe what are words of the year?
It's been a real game changer for us. Like, it's such a level up, and it's brought so much value to our lives. Why you might want to move away from New Year's resolutions, they can cause stress. People set these big grand goals and translate it into weekly actions or monthly actions. And it might be things like, I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, or I'm going to launch a new business, or I'm going to lose weight, or I'm going to make a new friend every week. And these are wonderful ideas, but once people actually get into them week by week, and they're clashing with real life, and people are trying to change so much about themselves all at once, it can lead to burnout, stress. And then by the time you get to February, you often find that people are giving up, which is really sad. And then, they might have been making some progress on this one, but no progress on this one, but then they're just burned out and drop all of them. Whereas what we do is we have a word of the year. So it's you take those good intentions, those goals, and you boil them down to a word that means something to you, hopefully multiple somethings. It's a place you want to grow or move or develop in the following year. And then it just subtly guides your actions and intentions for that year and brings you back to that place. And we find it really takes on a life of its own and its own energy and gains momentum and can lead to some real life-changing good.
I'd love for you to give an example of how you could translate New Year's resolutions to a word of the year. So let's say that my New Year's resolution, that I want to go to the gym 5 days a week, that I want to lose 20 pounds, that I want to stop eating fast food or junk food. We can see that they're kind of on a theme. How could I turn these into potential just one word?
Absolutely. So the one that immediately springs to mind is health. I feel like they're all related to health. And a key thing with the word of the year is that it doesn't mean you can't take those actions like, I'm going to try and go to the gym 3 times a week. It means if there's a week or a month where you lose momentum and you don't do it, you haven't failed. You can dip in and out, maybe take a month off, maybe go really hard this month, maybe life's happening. But like the word of the year just keeps bringing you back to it. So that's where I'd go with that, health. And of course, there's variations on that word. If health means something very specific to you, you might want to choose vitality or energy. If the reason you want to do this is because you've been feeling a bit sluggish, like you can make it a bit more personalized to you. A great example I heard this morning was I was chatting to someone at my running group, and she said, I was telling her about this practice and said, what would you choose? And she said, I want to practice coming home to myself and feeling more grounded, like making myself my home. And I said, oh, that's wonderful. Well, the obvious choice there is home. That could be your word of the year. For her, it means she is her home and she comes back to herself and she's carrying that with her wherever she goes, whatever environment she is in, whatever life's throwing at her. And I really liked that. Yeah, I thought it was cute. Home.
It's a good one.
Should I give another example?
Yeah, so how about one that's more oriented around work goals, productivity, finances, that type of thing? Like,
Okay.
Those are very common New Year's resolutions.
Absolutely. So I had a friend who was very smart and had a lot of big goals, but he was having trouble showing up. You know, when he actually showed up and worked, he'd get good stuff done, he was creating good content and was going to make big things happen. But he just didn't have like the habits. So he made his word consistency. Like that's what success looked for him at that time. That was the thing he was struggling at, the key ingredient he needed. That was a great word of the year, consistency. So sometimes it can be, you have all the tools and resources you need to be successful and meet your goals. There's just one little thing that needs a tweak. So your word of the year might be that thing. For me, I'm in that position. I'd say I've got all the ingredients I need. Now I just need to put them into action over the following year. I've got good goals, good resources. I've got the experience. I've got the knowledge. My word of the year is probably going to be launch for 2026. And it means launching all of that good stuff, like taking off. But the dual meaning also means launching myself. I guess actually there is one area where I felt like I needed a bit of improvement, and that is in how I am at public speaking, presenting, being on the fly with people, like pitching, things like that. So I'm doing a bunch of like comedy improv, theatrical improv, singing, contact improv dance, all these things to challenge myself and get myself more comfortable in those spaces. So that launch is also me acknowledging there's one area I need to improve in order to unlock all that good stuff, and I'm working on it, and that's a part of my word of the year.
I think that's a really good example. Like nobody would ever necessarily associate the word launch with doing theatrical improv as a practice to support that. But like that's a very good example of what words of the year can bring about. Kind of when you have this word that everything is reflected through, or it's the lens that you're viewing your decisions through, it really makes you stop and think and be like, yeah, if you just have one thing that you're optimizing for, but that can take on so many different unexpected detail actions like theatrical improv.
Yeah, absolutely. And my word of the year this year was a good example of that duality. So my word of the year this year is flow. We had some life challenges in 2024 that was sort of outside of our control, and it felt like we got out of flow for the first time, and it was a rare feeling for us. So I wanted to get back in flow. That's been achieved. Like it took a lot of work this year, but I feel like I'm back in flow. But the dual meaning was it was also about cash flow. I wanted a more like steady income. You know, we're freelancers, entrepreneurs, and sometimes, you know, like money can be doing this. So it's about having that a bit more steady as well. And that's also in a good place, gone well. So yeah, I really like finding a word that has multiple meanings. And is nice and open for other good that you might not be expecting. We found that words of the year often take on a life of their own, and the universe.
Which leads us into the story of your 2023 word of the year. Yes.
Okay, that's a good one. So late 2022, I bounced the idea off Jen of my word of the year being family for 2023. I was like, I'll definitely do this at some point. I don't know if I'll do this next year, and then Jen was very keen for me to do this, being a very family-oriented girl and seeing a lot of good here that could be unlocked. So she said, okay, well, you know, if you choose family, I will support you, and I'll even make that my word of the year. And I think this would be really good for you.
Make support my word of the year.
Yeah. So I did it, made family my word of the year, and it was mostly about having a better relationship with my family.
That's how the intention began when you chose it as your word of the year.
Yeah. So it was approaching them to have more open communication, being English, you know, that doesn't always come naturally in our culture. And it was also addressing some things from the past in myself, some like memories and things, and like addressing them and letting them go, processing some things. But then where the word of the year took on a life of its own and delivered something wonderful, totally unexpected, we got married. If you'd suggested that to me in January of 2023, I'd have said, no way. not in that I didn't want to marry Jane. It was just totally not on our radar. And then March, we decided we were going to get married, and then we got married in June. So, and I gained a whole new family.
All because the word of the year made us.
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Who knows? It definitely played a very significant role. I mean,
Family-oriented year.
Yeah. I'll talk about my word of the year for 2025. It was wellness. And usually Rory and I spend the last couple weeks of December really talking about what's going to be our word of the year. Like almost every day, we're really trying to have it picked by the new year. And in 2025, I did not have a word coming to me by New Year. And I listened to my intuition and I said, I think I need to wait. It's going to come to me, but it's not here yet. And I'm just going to go with that and let it arrive a bit later. So it came to me in, I think, late February, maybe early March. And it was wellness. And I had been ill and was ill for the majority of the first half of 2025, just catching every single cold, flu, COVID over and over and over again. Then one day when I was bedridden, just like laying in bed on my phone talking to ChatGPT, like, why does this keep happening to me? Got some insights that have blown my mind. I learned so much about myself and like basically how every single weird thing about me can be traced back to well, honestly, hypermobility, which just means that like I have more flexible joints and stuff, but like that ChatGPT was able to put this together as like this is kind of the building block upon which then nervous system dysregulation can stack, and learning all about the connection between nervous system and immune system. And I'd never really understood before how totally interrelated they are. So this year has been wellness. The focus is nervous system regulation, and it has been, I feel like the most intentional, deliberate hours upon hours I have put into supporting a word of the year. For the first 3 months, it was about 2 to 3 hours of daily practices for nervous system regulation, just trying to like build the baseline. And then as the year went on, I dropped that down to maybe 40 minutes a day or so. And then some bigger one-off things like doing hypnotherapy and now doing Rolfing, which is a somatic release. I've just become a very different person, and it's very interesting to think about how much it's changed my to-do list and how I prioritize. Historically, I've always been a person that is like, oh, I'm feeling run down. I'm going to power through. I'm just going to put more energy towards something. I'm going to crush it and conquer it by being extra and enthusiastic and whatever. 2 years ago, if I got sick, I would have been like, okay, I'm starting to feel sick. Time to make like 8 batches of bone broth and just go at it as hard as possible. And in beginning this podcast, I was doing a lot of research on to-do list archetypes, and I created an ebook and a quiz. You can find out your own to-do list archetype at thetodoshow.com. And it was very interesting for me doing this research at this time because my to-do list archetype completely changed this year by having wellness be my word of the year. So now the way I prioritize and the way I choose my next action for everything is reflecting upon what energy do I have available right now. And I would have never done that a year ago. But it's really changed me so fundamentally. And that's not to say that I can just completely, like, I have a day job. I can't just be like, oh, I'm a bit tired, I can't do anything. But it's more just feeling, okay, I'm feeling physically tired right now, but my brain is good, so I'm gonna lay in bed while I work on my laptop and like give my focus on the brain energy. And then, you know, if I start feeling a bit more physical energy 3 hours later, time to take a break from work and get moving and get that physical energy going. So yeah, just really actually paying attention to my needs, my energy. And it is a confusing process when you've been ignoring those signals for your entire life. So I'm still very much figuring it all out, but it's really been completely transformative in so many ways I would not have expected. So Rory's a real wordsmith, and he has helped me with many things like manifestations, or if there's an end goal I want, helping me word it so that the energy is very open for that. And that's something that we find is really important for words of the year. So you don't want to choose something negative or limiting. Could you give some more examples and background on that?
I'd say check in with yourself regularly how it feels, this word. And it doesn't have to be something you decide in the moment. If you found a word, you think it's the word, but you're not quite sure, just try it on for a week. Look at it every day, reflect on it, journal about it. If it feels a bit like kind of sticky, stuck, like not flowy, drop it and try another one. And often we'd recommend choosing a word that's more open than restrictive. So for example, if you, like a crude one, if you want more money, don't choose, and that's been a problem area for you, a source of stress. If your word of the year is money, you're probably going to feel stressed every time you look at it. It's going to conjure all those feelings. So you could choose a word like receive, or even flow. Yeah, that's a good example. Like money has been a source of stress for me at times, but flow feels very flowy. That felt like a nice word of the year. And you could even focus on the feeling you want, like peace. And then I feel like it's implied in that word that there's going to be a resolution to that money problem or an improvement baked into that. So you can choose, how you're going to feel, where you're going to end up, what the journey's going to be like, rather than, I'm going to fix this, I'm going to fix that, here's this problem.
And it doesn't mean that it has to be something totally positive or that only brings about positive things. For example, my 2021 word of the year was boundaries. I didn't have boundaries. It was something I needed to work on. Boundaries isn't an inherently fun, positive word, and it wasn't a fun, positive word of the year. The end result was, so that's an example of, I was focused on the end goal. The end goal was having boundaries. So it's still moving in that direction of positive strength, growth, everything.
Yeah, for sure. A couple of other examples, if you've been struggling with anxiety and you want less anxiety, your word of the year could be grounded, or security, strength, calm, peace. Find a word that feels good, feels flowy, and is linked to that thing you want to fix or improve.
For 2026, my word of the year is build, and that is because we are moving to our forever home, and there's a bunch of things where I'm already feeling my energy going in that direction. I'm going to be building things for our home. I'm going to be building community, but also I am going to be building this podcast, and I am not inherently a very patient person, something Rory's helping me learn and grow, but I definitely am kind of like, okay, I've put in the work, where's the result? That's my default. So I wanted to choose a word that was going where my energy was naturally flowing, but also giving me that mindfulness to reflect on of this is a time for building. Brick by brick, stone by stone, that I am building these things, and not to just be like, why isn't it already built? So that's another thing you can do. Where is your energy naturally going? What is your theme of the year naturally going to be? But something that you need a bit of mindfulness or a good reflection point on. Yeah,
absolutely. That's a good point, that you can look at what's coming up in the following year, or where you want to end up in the following year, and use that as sources for words of the year. And generally, I'd say if someone's good at something, then a lot of their focus is naturally there. So for example, if you're someone who finds it very easy to show up in the area of health, you're eating very healthy, you go to the gym, you have good habits, you might think, I'm going to level up even further, and I'm going to squat 300 pounds, and I'm going to do this, and then make your word of the year that. To be honest, it sounds like you're already doing pretty well in that area, and you're probably going to make those gains regardless, because you've already got a lot of momentum there, you're feeling good about it, you're excited, you clearly don't have resistance there. Maybe you've lost touch with your family, or maybe you don't have much work-life balance, or maybe you would like to have deeper connections with your friends. Choose one of those areas for your words of the year, something that is perhaps a bit lower down on the effort scale, result scale, and aim to bring that up a little bit. And Also, it doesn't have to become perfect during that year, but you're drawing a line in the sand, planting a flagpole, like, okay, this is an important area of my life. I'm going to make some gains here. And if at the end of the year it's 10, 20% better, that's awesome. And that's going to, the start is always the hardest bit. It's usually the hardest bit. And then it's probably going to keep growing and improving from there. So take care of itself.
We should also mention that this is a thing where AI can help. Rory had a good chat with ChatGPT a couple days ago. He knew the general theme that he wanted his word to be around, and then asked for, what did you ask for?
The first thing I did was gave it the word launch, which was my first idea I'd had for 2026. And I said, give me 20 similar words, synonyms, that sort of thing. So then ChatGPT is brainstorming ideas with me, coming up with words I might not have thought of. And then I'm asking, what's the meaning behind these words? Giving it the context, this is word of the year, and explaining my goals. And it's giving me words like ignite, like a self-sustaining reaction. I like the self-sustaining bit. Forge, just like made better and crafted in pressure and fires. And I was like, I'm not sure. I don't want to bring pressure and conflict into my life. But yeah, it gave me some nice ideas. And it also gave me an idea of something I'd never considered before, which was, well, Jen says I did, but I forgot this, a word ladder, or like, you don't have to have the same word of the year all year. If after a few months or 6 months or 9 months, you've crushed it and you're like, wow, I really delivered on that word, you could choose another one or adapt that word a bit. But yeah, it occurred to me I could have a couple of words this year. So exploring that idea.
Yeah, and you don't have to make up your mind about that at the beginning of the year. You can choose one word and see where it takes you to and build upon that when the time is right.
Yeah. Spring, that was another suggestion it gave. I liked that one. It was like a release of stored energy. I certainly feel like I've put the work in over the last 10 years. Now I'm ready to take off. And it was also seasonal change. So that's had a nice upward feeling to it, upward energy.
I like that. And this is a really fun conversation, at least for us, to have with friends and family. So I recommend that at your, well, I guess this is coming out after New Year's, but whatever the next social gathering you're at, I was going to say New Year's party, whatever the next social gathering you're at, you could tell your friends about this concept and discuss together. Even get some feedback from people who know you. Does this seem like a word that's going to really benefit me? I think it's really helpful to have some reflection with others.
Absolutely, yeah. And it's just fun hearing what they're prioritizing, what they're working on, what they want to get better at. It's a great way to create a deep conversation, get past the small talk. If your friends or family are boring you with politics or sports, pull out the words of the year.
Yeah.
Lead to a good chat.
Great advice. Well, thank you very much for coming and sharing your wisdom and wordsmithery. Is there anything else that you'd like to share?
No, I think we covered everything pretty well. Yeah, have fun with it. See what you come up with.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I'm Jen Tracy, and you've been watching The To-Do Show. If you're curious about how other people tackle their days, and honestly, who isn't, there's another conversation right here that'll probably surprise you. Go check it out. And here's something interesting. There's actually research showing that people fall into 8 distinct patterns when it comes to how they organize their lives. Productivity and psychology experts like Adam Grant and Gretchen Rubin have been studying this for years. We built a quiz based on that research, and people keep telling us it's weirdly accurate. It takes about 5 minutes, and you'll understand why certain systems work for you and why others never stick. Head to thetodoshow.com or check the link in the description to take the quiz. And please, please, please hit subscribe, and you can check that off your to-do list.